what the heck's going on with Jonathan Kuminga. Anthony Slater, ESPN's Anthony Slater, joining us now on the Elk Grove Kid Talk Line. Anthony, how's it going, man?
What's up? How are y'all?
Hanging in there.
What's going on?
Trying to figure out what the hell is happening with Jonathan Kuminga, because it feels like from the Golden State side, we've seen the same reporting once a day, just a daily thing where, okay, it's DeAnthony Melton, it's Al Horford, now we're hearing Seth Curry, and they're waiting for this Jonathan Kuminga thing to play out. Are the Warriors motivated to try and either sign or move Jonathan Kuminga maybe more than they were a couple of weeks ago?
Motivated to sign him. They tried to sign him. They had an offer out to him this week, and I would say there was the most movement I felt from them this week. And Jonathan Kuminga, at this point, as me and Shams reported yesterday, has just decided not to do it at this point. He's not in any type of rush to, accept the offer currently on the table from the Warriors. And clearly, at this point, the Warriors' plan as of yesterday was to have Kuminga back on the roster, which, in my opinion, has been kind of their plan the entire time, considering the dynamics at play, the sign and trade offers that are and aren't on the table. And I still think that is, again, like in a relative likelihood, considering the Warriors standing and in the restricted market and everything that play. But Jonathan Kuminga has to accept an offer at some point. And at this point, he is not ready to.
When you talk about the Warriors put out an offer, do you have any idea what the parameters of that deal would be?
Yeah, but I'm not going to get too into that right now.
So when you say motivated to sign him, does that mean that was the first legitimate offer they'd made him?
I will probably let's retrace back to the finals, and you'll probably think that's a wild place for me to go back to, but let's start with the finals. The moment after the finals, you can start negotiating with your own free agents, right? You saw some deals in the lead up to free agency. You guys can probably remember Harrison Barnes signing prior to free agency back with the Kings, right? Mm-hmm. So they could have at that moment started to get offers after Jonathan Kuminga and trying to solve the restricted free agency all the way back then, but neither side really, talked firm contract offers in the lead up to free agency when they could have, or in the early days of free agency, because it was very clear Jonathan Kuminga wanted to explore his outside market, and the Warriors were willing to let him go try to find sign and trades. And we're certainly, voicing that go try to find sign and trade offers that work for you from a contract standpoint, but also unless you're signing an offer sheet, and there wasn't many teams out there able to do that, you need to go get a suitor who's also willing to give an appealing enough trade package that we would accept that. So three sides have to agree here, right? Kings, for example, have to want Kuminga and give him a contract. Kuminga has to like that contract from a team like the Kings, and then the Warriors have to accept what the Kings are willing to offer, and that never really materialized over X amount of days. I think the Warriors never really necessarily thought that was going to materialize, and then now have come back to Jonathan Kuminga with what they thought, as we reported, was a fair market offer considering what else is out there. And Jonathan Kuminga said, for now, no thanks, I'm going to keep exploring my options.
Yeah, it's all interesting the way that this is playing out. And I know restricted free agency has been just an absolute nightmare this year specifically for the players. But the other element there that you left out, it's not just everyone has to accept the deal, but then the Kings have to find a way for someone else to take one of these players in order to bring in a player like Kuminga and fit him under the cap because of the base year compensation. So this is such a complex trade if it were to happen. What do you think the likelihood now, like if you're reading tea leaves, is that he's back with the Warriors or that he finds a new team?
Yeah, I think the qualifying offers is a real possibility later in the summer. I think, the Warriors may be up in their offer or eventually the standstill ending and him ending back on the Warriors remains a real likelihood. But, they again, like, at some point, do the Warriors decide they'll take, a lesser type of sign and trade offer? Do they lower their asking price? Do other teams come in and up their own asking price? I think there's a lot still to play out. And I think, while these restricted free agents do not have a ton of leverage in these scenarios, like time is leverage, and I think Kuminga's kind of using that right now. That's why we're sitting here in July, whatever it is today, 25th, and with no real answers, no firm movement because I just think time helps him a little bit. And I feel like I'm about to fire up the Sacramento aggregation machines here, but like
Nice.
for example, Kuminga, had contact with the Kings in the last couple of days, and it's the first time he's met Scott Perry, and this wasn't in person, but it's the first time he's communicated with Scott Perry, Doug Christie, and BJ Armstrong. And, from what I gather, he liked, the pitch that Scott Perry gave. And, he's open-minded to the idea of Sacramento. And I think part of that is because part of that pitch is, you're talking starting role. You're talking bigger opportunity than the Warriors are necessarily offering right now. And I think that's the part that shouldn't get lost in this whole situation is Jonathan Kuminga is not just looking for the exact contract he wants in free agency. He's looking for the opportunity he wants on the court.
Anthony Slater, ESPN, talking Jonathan Kuminga and kind of the latest with this. Do you anticipate how do I want to, when we talk about this lasting into August and maybe even into September, is that Jonathan Kuminga just kind of knowing he has time and trying to wait this out? Or is there some kind of like trying to stick it to Golden State a little bit? Like, no, I know I can kind of screw you over by doing this. And so we might see this drag on because of that.
I think he's in no mood to do favors to the Warriors and,
Sure.
Acquiesce to the idea that they want to wrap up business quick. He, for the first time in his career, has a small level of agency over his career. It's restricted free agency. We see how non-powerful that is in many ways, but he if there is still weeks and months to try to find the exact opportunity that he thinks is best for him basketball and financially, to him it would be no reason for him to not take the time. I don't think it's I don't think priority one is sticking it to the Warriors, but priority one is certainly not like I said, helping the Warriors wrap up business as quick as possible because he feels some level of loyalty or love to them.
Sure.
You know what, Slater, I want to ask you this. What is it going to take for the Kings if they were to come up with a deal with Kuminga's side? But what are they going to have to give up? Because we've already heard, that, the Dario Saric, Devin Carter, maybe a protected first or a couple of seconds. That's probably not getting it done. What do you think would be something that gets it done?
Well, I'll say this. First-round picks are very much, interesting to the Warriors because even if they can't get, the players they would exactly want in a sign-and-trade scenario with Kuminga now, picks can then be rerouted, right, later for players that help the core. And that is still their priority is to, either get Kuminga back to help this Steph Curry team next year or, use him to get players who can really help them contend. Of the two most concrete teams that are in the mix, and there's others that maybe could join, but we've reported it's Kings and Suns. The Suns do not have a tradable first, which is a big problem for them in this conversation. The Kings do have tradable first, and they have appealing first because they're Sacramento Kings first-round picks. They also have, 2032 Minnesota?
2031, right? And they still have partial of the 2027 Spurs pick.
Yeah, that's a much fuller cupboard in this conversation than Phoenix has.
Yeah.
They have a Keon Ellis, they have a Keegan Murray. I'm not at all saying that they're going to put those type of guys on the table, but I'm just saying, like, when we talk about fuller cupboards, the Kings do in this scenario. Again, the offer you mentioned, the names that have been thrown about, that is not going to appeal enough for the Warriors to shake any level of movement. But if there is maybe a frustration level that deepens into the summer, and if there's maybe more appealing unprotected type first on the table, if a Keon Ellis potentially is, I don't know, maybe the conversation does change.
Last thing for you, Anthony, you've been super generous with your time. We appreciate you. How do you think this ends? And has that answer changed at all over the last couple of weeks?
No, I would still say I do think Jonathan Kuminga plays for the Warriors to start next season, because they are, they kind of just, like, all the stuff we've mentioned. I mean, I think everybody kind of understands just the team control leverage and the difficulties in, making a trade happen now compared to January. But, unless they are going to really kind of go to a place with their contract offer that's more appealing to Kuminga, I do think it drags into like August, September range. And he potentially, like I said, is back on a $7.9 million qualifying offer, which would just create probably an uncomfortable camp and, drama filled. Part of the appeal, which you guys understand on the qualifying offer, while it's significantly less money than he's even being offered at this point right now, it comes with an inherent no trade clause. So you control your immediate future, where you can kind of direct yourself where you want to go. And also you become an unrestricted free agent next summer when there is theoretically more cap space and more people willing to come after you. If Jonathan Kuminga is audacious enough to go down that road and reject more guaranteed money and immediate money, that gives him a lot more control over his future. I'm not saying I'd necessarily advise it, but I think that's on the table.
Anthony Slater, ESPN, does a great job covering the Warriors in the NBA for them. You said August or September. We look forward to having this exact conversation with you again in a few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's the team I most primarily cover has made 0 moves, and it's July 25th. So here we go. I might not get a summer.
You're open.
Jobs already in the middle of free agency.
You've made more moves than Golden State has. Anthony, thank you so much, man. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, fellas.
Later, bro. Anthony Slater.